Great to be back when we're talking European rugby. Starts this weekend. Matt, plenty of excitement around it, isn't there?
Yeah, well, it's very unusual starting so late. We're going to get a couple of days till Christmas and we've got our first European game. So it's different for all of us, really. We've probably got a few question marks on whether that's the right format or not. We'll only know later in the year. Trade-off is we get 2 weekends of quarterfinals, which is quarterfinals are the best weekends of club rugby in the year. But it's going to be tough to know whether it's the good one or the bad one. But yeah, it's great, mate. It's the best competition in the world, and obviously Irish rugby is hugely linked with the Heineken Cup, and the club rugby comes alive in Ireland when that cup comes out. You know, everyone's after it. Munster the great team. Leinster really got a shot at it, and Ulster got it in their DNA as well. So and Connacht have got a good run at it, even though the competition's probably structured against them. So yeah, it's always exciting time of year.
Alan, you have plenty of history in the competition. How much are you looking forward to it this year?
Yeah, very much so, Stuart. I think, as Matt said, I remember as a player, it's always a different week when the European Cup comes around. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts to the season nowadays for a professional rugby player, and different breaks with internationals, domestic leagues, all that kind of stuff. But Europe is different. It brings a certain amount of excitement. And I remember that fondly from my days playing in the competition. You know, when you go in on a Monday morning and it's European week, it's a different week. It's a great chance to test yourself against players right across Europe, different environments, the challenges of going to France, the away trips, the excitement of home games in Thomond Park. Bring back great memories to me, and it was always a different week, and the intensity and the excitement levels just went up a couple of notches, and so it'll be the same for the players. I think obviously we're going through unprecedented times with COVID, a lot of uncertainty around sport in the last 18 months, but thankfully we have got this competition to look forward to. I think it's exciting, and the players love it. I think. It's a real mental and physical challenge, Europe, and it's about building momentum and something that I loved as a player.
We'll get on to Munster's talking points in a bit, but if we start firstly with the Irish provinces in Leinster, Matt, they have Bath on Saturday at the Viva. Leinster over the last couple of years maybe struggled in the big games coming up. What do you make of them this year, Matt? They probably will be too good for Bath, don't you think? But just how do you think they'll fare this season?
Yeah, I think just watching a little bit of Bath, especially their defence, I think they're really going to struggle against Leinster. If they don't change their defence, especially on set plays, Leinster will cut them apart. I'm not one, Stu, that's subscribing to the panic, that Leinster are losing. You're never going to win this competition every year. It's just not. No one does it. It's just too hard. But Leinster are a club that'll be there or thereabouts. To get knocked out in the semis, and we've got to remember last year Leinster had to go away to Sandy Park and they beat Exeter in a great game. Then they had to go away to La Rochelle. That's really hard. As Quinny just said, to go to France and win at the top end is really, really tough. And so I don't think that's means Leinster haven't got a chance. I actually think the opposite. I think they're there or thereabouts. And exactly as Alan also said, this competition gets a life of its own in the last month because you get that momentum, how's your injuries, where you're feeling, and then you get the luck of the draw. Where's the semi going to be at? And when you get your home semis and so on, that has a huge influence on your progress into it. So Leinster I thought they played magnificent rugby against Connacht. They got ambushed a bit by Ulster, and like every great team, they don't like losing, and they came back and played really well. And I think Leinster at the end of the season will be there or thereabouts, and they've got as good a chance as anyone as winning it. But this Saturday, I think they'll definitely be too good. I think Bath are a club that's a little bit lost at the moment, and the Aviva the week before Christmas hasn't been a happy hunting ground for English clubs, and I think Bath will fall into the same path that the others have.
Yeah, Bath are really, really struggling. But why do you think Leinster have come up sort of a wee bit short there the last couple of years. Is it just physicality, or is it a lot more than that, Alan?
It's not just physicality. It's very, when you get into quarterfinals, semi-finals, finals, it's about form, injuries, availability of players, luck on the day, a little bit of luck that you have. And I thought, look, that I suppose Leinster's lost to Saracens and lost to La Rochelle in the last couple of seasons has been the one talking point is coming out as physicality and power and all that kind of stuff. And that's probably the question mark that's there. But Matt said it, it's a very hard competition. And on the day, things can go wrong for you. And it's a very difficult competition to win, to get everything right. You look at Leinster last year away at Exeter, one of the most physical teams in the Gallagher Premiership. They were outstanding. They had pace, tempo, power, physicality, everything in their game. They have a couple of injuries for that game in La Rochelle, and a game they started really well, and they looked like they settled into the game exactly what you want to do in France when you go there. And it started to unravel a little bit in the second half, small margins, a little bit of discipline. And some of the big La Rochelle powerful players, Antonio making big carries, and Will Skelton, they did some damage there. And players can just switch off a little bit. Of course, the physicality helps, but it doesn't win you games. And I think Leinster matured, and they've got Ronan Kelleher, who, in my opinion, he can be world class. I think he's shown his quality. He's matured, and he's developing into a wonderful player. Porter's back in the front row. And I think they can. Their back row, Jack Conan, Doris, Van der Fleer, all brilliant players and in real good form. So if they can keep those guys fit and healthy, I think they can have a real impact in this competition. Go back to Saracens, the scrum was an issue. I think these things happen on the day at times, and it's probably the one area that you would try and target Leinster. They don't have any big physical brutes like Skelton, like Antonio, like Billy Vunipola. But their overall game is well equipped to go far in this competition and be potential winners. So is it an issue? We will know more as the competition goes on. I think they'll have learned a lot from that about playing, about stopping those big runners, get at them and hurt them, like in that La Rochelle game, and the scrum issues that they had against Saracens. So they'll learn from that, and I think they will be thereabouts. So I don't think it's a big issue. Of course, on the day, if you have the likes of Antonio, Skelton, they can help you. They can break up a maul. They can make a big carry. They're unique players, and not every team has them. Toulouse have a lot of power. And you've got to stop that power, and there's ways of doing that. So, Leinster are not ever going to, overpower a team with just physicality. I think their accuracy, their tempo, and their very physical side as well, Leinster, when they need to be. So it's just about learning that in the last couple of years, and I don't think it's a big issue.
You mentioned, Alan, there, Toulouse. They were obviously the first team to win 5 of these titles. Leinster will be hurting from that, won't they? They wanted to be the team to do that, didn't they?
Yeah, of course. And they were in a good position. I think everybody fancied them to do that. Obviously, it's sometimes it is the luck of the draw. And for any team that has won this competition, I think the history has shown us that, away quarterfinal wins are hard to come by. Away semi-final wins are hard to come by. And so sometimes, you need a little bit of luck with the draw and where your game is going to be. Is it going to be in your home country? And that makes a difference. Toulouse are a side that I think they obviously have great history in this competition. They really pride themselves. One of the few French teams that just when the European Cup comes around, like I said at the start, they get excited about it. It's in their DNA. They have a great team now. They have a lot of balance. They have power, pace, a lot of French internationals, Dupont, Intimac, Tolofua, Mauvaka. You can just keep naming them, the Arnold brothers. Great mix and blend to their game. Mattis Labelle on the wing. I think he's a very exciting player. So they have loads of players across the board, and I think, like I said, they come alive for this competition, and they're in great shape, and they're the ones who've gone on and won the 5th one, which of course Leinster wanted to do that, but they're going to be thereabouts. And again, it's small margins. There's probably 3 or 4 or 5 teams who you'd fancy to be right in the mix at the end, and Toulouse are certainly the favourites, and justifiably so. I think Leinster just sit behind them. But if Leinster were to play Toulouse in a quarter-final, semi-final, or round 16 game in Dublin, well, you'd fancy Leinster, but if you're going to the south of France, it takes away a little bit of that favouritism, if you like, and it gives it to the home team.
And Matt, speaking of going to France, your former team Ulster have to do that. They have to go to Clermont.
Yeah.
What do you make of Ulster? Is it just the usual? They beat Leinster at the RDS, then they lose to the Ospreys just last week. Just up and down, Matt, or where do you think Ulster are at the moment?
Oh, I think the Ospreys defeat would have been shattering for the team, because I actually think they're over that Stu. I think they've matured and moved on, and I think Dan McFarlane, their coach, has done an outstanding job up there. And they were equal first in the competition, and then the lose of the Ospreys is very disappointing. Now they did make a lot of changes. Let's be very fair to them. There was I haven't got the exact number here in front of me, but I think there was only 2 players left in the pack from the pack that played Leinster. So they have made a lot of changes, but that still doesn't take away the fact that they got beaten. But if you're going to lose a game, it's not bad to do a week before Europe starts, because that'll refocus them. And as Alan said, European weeks, they got an edge to them. Ulster is a club that highly value Europe. The supporters value it, the committees value it, and the players and staff value it. So they'll want to do well in it. They've got a really tough assignment away to Clermont. Stade Michelin there, Frederick Michelin is a really, really hard place to go. I was there a long time ago, and I got a win there, and I can tell you we won by the skin of our teeth. But not many teams go there and pick up the win. So I saw them play last week. That is Clermont, and they are mauling exceptionally well. They've still got some old stages in their back line that are guiding them around. The generals are there. Camille is still there at 10, and they're going to move Ulster around a lot and confront them a lot, where Ulster don't like it. Now, and again, at Ravenhill on a cold, wet Friday night is a completely different kettle of fish to going over to Clermont and playing them in what looks to be cold, clear weather in front of a packed house in Clermont. So I think Ulster will really know a lot more about them at full time if they've got what it takes, or are they just pretenders? And it'll be a very interesting one. I actually think Clermont will win it. I'd like to see Ulster win it, but the loss last week does put questions in your mind. The only thing we can say to put that loss into perspective is, I think Coach McFarlane was preparing for this week and sacrificed last week. He didn't want to lose that game. He didn't think he would, but I think there was a reason for it.
Yeah, Quinny, what do you make of Ulster? They have a couple of missing: Henderson, Jordy Murphy. Clermont, I think, of Lopez, Pinot, Rocket, to name a few. They still have a lot of stars in Clermont. They mightn't be the side they used to be, but it's going to be very, very difficult for Ulster, isn't it, Quinny?
It is going to be very difficult. I think there's a lot of Lavanini is missing as well. Obviously, he's serving a suspension, but whether they play Vahamahina, Arthur Turia is there, Morgan Parra, Lopez, Fritz Lee, Yato is a great player, the Fijian back row. So they've a lot of power, they've a lot of pace, they play with great width to their game, and nothing's changed as regards going to Clermont, because it's a wonderful stadium. The crowd get behind them. If they get a flow to their game, they go crazy, and the players respond to that. So for Ulster, and I think they've been there before, they'll realise the atmosphere, and they'll understand that if you don't control the tempo of the game, you're in big trouble. If they get on the front foot, and just look at Munster last year. They went there Clermont started like a house on fire. Early tries looked like they were going to blow Munster off the field, and then Munster start this remarkable comeback and believe in themselves. They're accurate, they hold on to the ball, and if you build, we probably say this a lot about French teams, but if you build multiple phases, they switch off a little bit, no matter how talented these guys are. And you've got to do that in France if you want to be successful and be in with a chance of winning. You've got to retain possession. You've got to play with a bit of pace to your game. Players have got to step up and want to make hard yards, make carries, and you can stretch them. And Munster did that last year, and you put that little bit of seed of doubt in their minds, and you start to believe as a team. And Ulster have got to do that. They've got to, I'm saying you got to go and start well. Well, look at Munster last year. They didn't start well. They started making mistakes, conceding tries, and you look like it's going to be a long, long day, and they end up with this remarkable win at the end of the game. I think Ulster have just got to believe in themselves, because I think they've shown us glimpses when they retain possession and when they hold on to the ball, and when they protect that ball and play with a little bit of wit and expansion, that they're a good side. But the problem, and we keep saying this about Ulster, and whether they like it or not, we're going to keep saying it, unless they back up a big win with another win, a hard one of these ones where you got to roll up the sleeves, and that was the Ospreys one. We talk about Leinster standards and people trying to attain that level and get to their level. They have more depth for sure, but there's a standard there that, and Mick Galway used to always say it to us as when he captained Munster, we don't, no matter what, if we lose one, we don't go out and allow another team beat us the week after. We find some kind of resolve or resilience to get that result no matter what, and you have a different kind of drive and temperament. And that was the disappointing thing for me with Ulster, that after the big win, the high of the win in the RDS, they needed to grind out a result over in the Ospreys. Now, the Ospreys made it very difficult for Munster a few weeks previous as well, and they have that ability to do that to teams. But I was just disappointed that they didn't find a way, and that kind of question mark still hangs over Ulster. I think when they play and they're on the front foot and they get their mojo going, they're a very good side and they can score tries, but it's just when they don't have the ball, making good decisions, and they've got to do that in Clermont. Will Vermeulen be available? He'd be a massive asset if he is, even though he hasn't played for them. But just his presence alone around there, and Henderson's a huge loss. Jordy Murphy, that kind of experience. But I think if they believe in themselves, they could certainly cause Clermont trouble. But you'd have to imagine Clermont are the side that are going to win this game.
Tell me about it, Quinn. It's difficult supporting a team for 31 years. You never know what the result's going to be. You mentioned there, Dwayne Vermeulen there. He's going to be a massive asset, and there is a bit of chat he may be involved on Saturday. It'll be great if he is for Ulster.
Yeah, he's a great player, and Matt knows this as a coach as well. You bring in leaders into a group when you need leaders. You need people to step up in France. There's no doubt you can't just go there and think, well, we've trained well all week and it's been lovely in training and we've trained hard. There's a mental side to this as well. You need guys to say, right, we're going to go toe to toe here. A bit of old school approach that you rally the troops in the dressing room and you go out with fire, and it still doesn't guarantee you any sort of results around, but it means you have to be ready for the fight. And his kind of experience in leadership in that group, he's a kind of fellow who will be kind of have that wry smile if he's in the team going out on Saturday. And guys got to respond. They can't expect Dwayne Vermeulen to go out there and be the one, but you've got to step up, and you need leaders. And that's the thing that I always say about Europe. It's about having that fight, having that old school approach sometimes, that you're going to stand toe to toe here and you're going to give it your best, and they need that fight and desire there. And Vermeulen involved would be massive. Matt knows that as a coach. I wouldn't be looking at his game minutes in the last 4 or 5 weeks and saying, well, they're limited and he had COVID. I'd be saying, get him on the bench, start him, bring him off, whatever. Have him some way involved in that team bus pulling up in Clermont on Saturday.
Matt, as a coach, how frustrating is it? A big win and then you don't back it up the next week. Like, are you just tearing your hair out?
Oh, mate. Well, I'm not bringing this up because Alan's there, but when I was coaching Ulster 10 years ago, we had an incredible win against Munster in Limerick at the time, and the first time Ulster had beaten Munster since, I think it was 1914 or 1915 or something like this. The next week we went over to Edinburgh, and Edinburgh were right down the bottom, and of course we lost. You just walk around going, why? Where did this come from? Why does it happen? And Quinny smacks it right on the head. And I'm not taking, your coaches can't abdicate responsibility, but you also got to look for responsibility. And leadership is so important. And one of the reasons why Quinny's generation at Munster were so successful is because they had so many great leaders. And Irish rugby, is littered with great leadership. If we go back right to Willie John McBride, look at the influence those guys, Kieran Fitzgerald, and then you're coming through into like Paul and Brian O'Driscoll's time and moving forward. Leadership is super important. And at club level, where you obviously you still got very good players, but you haven't got all the international players, that leadership is infectious. And when you've got the players learn a lot more from the people around them than they do from a coach. And that's why you need, we say one captain, 23 leaders. Everyone has to lead in their area. They've got to beat the guy in front of them. They've got to be that man. And you can do it one week, but if you don't do it the next week, doesn't matter who's coaching you, you'll lose. And so what Alan's saying is right. I am sure Coach McFarlane will be rolling him out on skates if he has to, but get him on the field. And I'd start him no matter what. Just say, mate, go as long as you can. Go, give us everything you got. When you've run out of juice, I'll get you off. But go. And he's a champion. He'll give him 60 minutes if they can possibly get him out. But if they don't, these places are so hard to go to and eke out a win on these big away games in France. It is so difficult. And I'm not taking anything away from Munster's great win last year. It was phenomenal. I thought they were dead and sunk for all money, and Munster came back and had an unbelievable win. But it was an empty stadium. And that's not taking anything away from Munster's win. What I'm saying is the mountain that Ulster have to climb is even harder because these people up there in Claremont, they're fanatic. They're fanatical and fanatics about their club. It just, they got drums and bands and it just goes on and on and on. It is one of the hardest places in the world to go and get a win. So if you can win there, you're a good team, like Munster proved last year.
Well, we'll see if Ulster can pull it off. Alan, moving on to your old team, Munster, where do we start? 22 new registered players, still some players and coaches stuck in South Africa, which is so disappointing for them because of COVID. And they're going to be taking on Wasps on Sunday, a massive mountain to climb. What do you make of it all?
Yeah, it's a lot's been spoke about it, Stuart, and it is what it is. They've a crazy situation really with what happened in South Africa and the players testing positive there and having to isolate 14 management and players and staying in South Africa. Players coming home, I think 34 came home, and there's some positive cases amongst them as well. So it's been very strange and crazy and unique, I think. All eyes will be on that Wasps-Munster game on Sunday to see what happens, and maybe we might see one or two emerging stars. I think it's a difficult situation, I think Munster are lucky that, they've 9 internationals, I think, is it at home, that were due to fly out a week after and play the Lions game, the second URC game. Luckily they didn't, and that they're, Munster in a better position than say Cardiff or Scarlets, I think, and they've a fair bit of experience there, and then they've got to make up the rest of the squad with NTS players, the provincial talent squad, All Ireland League players who are probably identified to be, involved in future academies and stuff like that. And they've got to step up and go and play. Playing Europe, as I said, Europe is different. I think the only glimmer of hope is that, and the only solace here is that, and I have to be very careful saying this because Wasps have a lot of injured players. I think they've 17 or 18 players out. They've been really stretched themselves. Players like Joe Launchbury, Dan Robson, Fekatoa, really top-class, world-class players are missing. Does it make it a little bit easier? Slightly, but it makes no sense if Munster go and do something here but as a Munster man, I said this a few times during the week, I'd just love to be in that situation where I was one of those internationals at home and trying to bring on some young guys and say, let's go and give it a crack. And one thing we'll do is just step up to the plate. We may be beaten. There's no pressure here because the reality is, unless something extraordinary happens, Wasps win this game. But they can learn a lot. They can come together as a group and they can get something out of it. They've home and away with Casts in the next 2 rounds, and then they've Wasps at home. So they still have a glimmer of hope. If you win, you can win 2 games in this and collect bonus points and stuff like that, and maybe have a chance of getting into the round 16 stage. Win 3 games and you will make it. So I was really happy that Munster came out right from the word go and said, we're going to play this game. Now, they were a little bit more fortunate than, we'll say, Cardiff or Scarlets. That they had those internationals at home, and that gives it a strong foundation. But it's a very difficult situation, and I'm glad that they're going to play this game. And it's, as I said, it's going to be an intriguing contest. What
did Peter O'Malley say yesterday? He's training with lads early 2000s. Keith Earls old enough to be their father. What did you make of that, Alan?
Well, I had that situation when I was coming towards the end of my career, when you had the likes of Keith Earls coming training and some of the younger players as well. So yeah, they're good players, and they're guys who are probably, all the academy players. I think this isn't even a sub academy. This is guys in the national talent squad. This is guys in the provincial talent squad. So they're kind of levels below the academies and the sub academies. So Munster had so many players with them in South Africa, and more were to join the internationals, I think. And it was in with a view to taking on the Bulls and the Lions, and then trying to integrate the internationals and get them to play, which they should have been playing the Lions last weekend. And that team would have been as close as the team would have started the Wasps. That's ideally what they wanted to happen. But obviously all that went up in the air, and you have young guys here, and someone like Patrick Campbell, who's been playing with young Munsters, really, really talented player. He could be involved and has trained with him. I think what an opportunity for him. Daniel Okeke, who plays with Shannon, unbelievably powerful back row player, really promising, played for the Ireland 20s. He's someone who could go out and shine here. Roman Salanoa, who came from Leinster a year and a half ago, and I said a lot of injuries. He's been back fit. It could be a great opportunity for him, whether he starts or is on the bench. Chris Farrell, risky situation with Chris Farrell. Do you put him straight into the team and risk him, picking up an injury? It's hard for a guy being out injured for a long time like that. So it's a very strange situation, but one they've got to get on with. And, those young players, I think they'll feel a bit of comfort with the likes of Dialinde, Peter O'Mahony, Ty Byrne, these guys. So I think it's one that could be a difficult day for him, but I'm kind of really excited and looking forward to seeing it. And I don't expect Munster to win. Maybe they will shock us and bring some of that Munster spirit that's needed, and play with a bit of freedom as well. So let's see what happens, but it's certainly one that's going to be really intriguing.
Yeah, Matt, what do you make of it? Some boys playing Energy AIL, Duradoyle 1 week, and the Heineken Cup the next. Pretty fascinating, isn't it?
It's like something out of those, those old storybooks, isn't it? The kids dream of playing. We used to have the one as cricketers that there'd be an injury and you'd be asked from the crowd to come out and, you know, field for Australia or something, which does happen. There are some guys who've got to do that in substitutions. But, you know, the chance of it happening. So you've got these young Munster guys that be looking at the Munster team, dreaming of one day wearing the jersey at the senior level, thinking that's years away if it is ever going to happen. Because as Alan knows, you have a lot of guys come into the system and a lot of them don't make it. They never actually play a game. The system pumps them out. As we say, the game's finished with you before you're finished with the game. These guys are going to play. I reckon that's a great story. What a story these guys are going to tell their kids in years to come. You know, Christmas time, there's going to be some great tales told in Munster. And as Alan said, they got zip to lose. Everyone in the world expects them to lose, and they should lose. But that's their opportunity, isn't it? This is the great thing. Those boys have got an opportunity that they never thought they would have. You'd be saying, young man, grab this, grab it with everything you got, give it everything you got, and hang on to the bugger as tight as you can. Don't let it go. And as Alan said, they mightn't win, but they come out and put in a performance. They come out and maybe limit the damage so they don't get Wasp doesn't get a bonus point win, and they score some points themselves. That could be in 2 months' time. That could be as good as a win for Munster. So all these opportunities can be laid out and twisted into a positive light for these young men. And again, the senior players, here's their chance to really step up and be the leadership that we just spoke about that Alan was saying. I think in the darkness of this situation, there's nothing but light for the team that they put out, because they've got nothing to lose. Everything they do can be a bonus. And that's the sort of day as a young man you would thrive in. You would just say, this is my dream. This is my day. It might never come again, but boy, I'm going to grab this bugger now and I'm going to do it. I'm like Quinny. I can't wait to watch it. I think it's going to be the most fascinating game of the weekend.
I can tell you fancy them there, Matt, do you? To go and win? If I wasn't saying this publicly, if it was just us, I'd be saying to Quinny, I reckon these blokes might give this a shake. Publicly, I'm not going to say that because it's just impossible, isn't it? It's just, we just know it's impossible. But that's what the great things are. We can do it.
It doesn't make sense that any of us would kind of speak and say that Munster will go and win this game. It was always going to be really difficult, even with a full Munster team, when you're away from home. And I know Wasps have had their struggles themselves, but you know, even when you think about the situation here, Stuart, is that little bit of physical development in guys who are in the system that are not academy players, they're adults, they're men, as opposed to 19, 20-year-olds who are still very, very powerful and strong guys. But it's just that little bit of battled, hardened approach that you get when you're in a system for a while. So even if you're a squad player, and going back to my days with Munster, we had a group of players who, when the internationals are away, which was probably 17 or 8 guys pretty much away with the international squads all the time, there was a group behind that were, the depth was phenomenal, and they were hard, they were resilient, they were powerful. And then you go down another level and, you know, of course you've got talent and you've got excitement and you've got really good players, but it's about decision making. It's about a little bit of a nous, being cute in what way you play the game, being confrontational, all that kind of stuff that comes with a little bit of experience. You'd probably have 8 or 9 internationals starting, and then you've got 6 guys on that will start that, you know, are lacking that little bit of experience. Now, what you get from that is you get maybe no baggage. You get guys who have talent who say, I'm going to show a little bit of character here. I'm going to do something. I'm going to smash one of the opposition players. But that's what worries me. And then maybe the scrum situation, that physical power that you get with maturity, with age, particularly front row players. You know, they get stronger as they get older, and a lot of them don't mature until their mid-20s. So if you've young props in there who haven't really experienced that, that would be a little concern. So there's certain areas, and John Mitchell has said this, that they're going to attack and challenge Munster. He played down the whole thing in his press conference yesterday that they're not going to be fooled by this Munster just turning up to fulfil the fixture, and that he reckons, look, the reality is it's not going to be the strongest Munster team. It's going to be a very really strong and half very, very weak, but how they gel together and that little bit of togetherness and hardness that you need in these games is what will make a little bit of a difference. But you look at some guys, and Matt said this, we could see one or two of these younger players, and you might see something in what one or two things they do to go, I like that. I like that bit of presence or that little bit of attitude about this guy. And I think this Okeke fella is capable of that. I think he's a powerful brute. He's a really good ball carrier. But let's wait and see. Look, on paper, Wasps win this game. I'm sure Munster and Peter O'Mahony will be firing up the players to say, we're not just turning up here. And I hope they bring a bit of fight, and I hope they get something out of it, even if they get well beaten. I hope they can get something out of it that involves growth for the future, or togetherness that brings everyone, because they've been through a difficult situation the last few weeks. Now, people on the outside of sport, and lots of people have been in far worse situations, so it's not the end of the world. Sport gives everyone a lift, and I hope we get a bit of a lift out of them on Sunday. And we'd be crazy to say Munster will win this game. It's not realistic, but they've done crazy things over the years, and I've involved in some of those matches. So, but look, I think the thing here is, and if I was in the Wasp group, and Mitchell is someone who's a lot of experience, and Lee Blackett as well, they're not going to buy into this situation. The challenge for them all week is, let's block out the outside noise. This is a potential banana skin. So it's just the mental side of this for both sides is going to be really, really important.
Well, we shall see. Moving on to Connacht, they have a good chance. First up on Sunday at home, the sports ground against Stade Francais. Stade Francais definitely aren't the side they used to be. Matt, sure they're not. And Andy Friend will want to pick up a win to start the competition, won't they?
Yeah, the Stade Francais of the past, that was, really the glam club of France when Max Gazan was the owner there, or the president. Those days are long gone. I believe my view of Stade Francais is that they haven't quite realised that yet. They still think they're superstars, but they just don't win any games to back it up anymore, or don't win many. And I know going to the show, to the sports ground on a very cold, wintry weekend, with that wind whipping in off the Atlantic, with the beautiful view of the cemetery overlooking the ground, is not something that the Parisians relish. And it's something that Andy Friend will be just rubbing his hands with glee. I think Connacht can come away with a famous scalp there. I watched a little bit of the Stade. I didn't watch the whole game. I watched a bit of the Stade Francais game on the weekend, and they were ordinary. They've got some good individuals. It's a top 14 team in France, so they're not fools. But this is not a great side playing rugby like Toulouse are playing. And the other part with the French, as Alan was pointing out, it's about the attitude they bring. And clubs like Toulouse and Clermont and La Rochelle, because Ronan's there, they have an attitude towards Europe that is like the Irish clubs. They believe in Europe, they believe in the concept, they think it's important, and they want to go for it. Now, in the old days, Stade Francais had that attitude when they were up there and thereabouts 20 years ago, 15 years ago. That's not there anymore. Their focus is totally top 14, survival in top 14, not to get relegated, and at best to make a playoff. So I'm not so sure they're going to come with the killer attitude required to win in Europe, that you need, wherever you go away from home, you need a killer attitude. I'm not so sure they'll bring that. And if they don't, Connacht at home have been playing some really positive rugby. They had a bit of a shaky start. Away from home, their defence has been poor. I'm going to use that term. I have to say it. They've conceded a lot of points. They've scored some really good points, but away from home, they've let in far too many. And it's something that Andy Friend needs to really focus on. I'm sure he doesn't need me to tell him that. But I think this week they got a good shot, a very, very good shot, and I actually think they can pull off the win.
Yeah, Alan, Connacht have never made the knockout stages of the Champions Cup. They have Stade and Leicester in their pool. Do you think they are good enough this season, Alan, or do you still think they'll come up short?
I think that it's a really difficult group of matches for them. I think they will beat Stade. I think I watched most of that Stade game last week, and they have some, really athletic, physical players, and I think some dangerous players who can really cut you open if you give them time and space. But I just think Connacht, they've increased their resilience. I think when they're on the front foot, they're a brilliant side to watch. And they'll know, Andy Friend knows this, they've got to win. They've got to win this game because they've back-to-back games with Leicester, which I think is going to decide whether Connacht get out of this group, because I think the following week they're away in Leicester, and I think not alone will Leinster be favourites, but they can beat you up and batter you as well, and kind of damage you mentally. And I think I'm not saying that I think Leicester are going to just run away with that game the week after, because I think Connacht, there's just something about their confidence, the way they play and the belief. But I think there's still issues about them physically and having a real physical presence. And I think if teams, and Leinster probably showed that last weekend in the game, where they totally overpowered them and made them look ordinary at times in that second half. Andy Friend spoke about maybe the mental side of it, that they got a little bit ahead of themselves. But I think they've got to just focus on this one game, this Stade game, get a win, get some confidence and momentum going. They're going to be a big side, Stade, but they're a side, I think, that, as Matt said, their focus will be probably far more on the top 14. That's not to say that they'll come and try and win. If you allow them play, they can really hurt you no matter where the game is on. But I'd fancy Connacht to do that. And then it's the back-to-back games with Leicester will really kind of decide whether Connacht get out of the group and make that round 16 and get into the knockout stages. I think they're good enough. It'd be a brilliant achievement for them. I think it's probably more important that they get into Europe next year through the domestic league, which is going to be difficult and tricky for them as well. They're good enough to be there, and let's hope they can grow here and show some brilliant performances. And that has to start with a win against Stade. And you never know. They go to Welford Road the following week. It's really hard and daunting task to do that because of the history of Leicester and the way they won 9 out of 9 in the Gallagher Premiership. And the problem when you play Leicester is they're very, very strong defensively. And Matt spoke about the contrast between number 1 and the team at the bottom of the table, which is Bath. The amount of tries they're conceding, points they're conceding. Leicester have conceded the fewest amount of tries, and it shows with them being top. So they're very, very strong defensively. It's hard to break them down. And that's going to be the challenge for Leicester, for Connacht. But look, we're going ahead to next week, and I shouldn't be doing that. I think it's about starting well at home. And if they play the way with the pace and tempo that we know Connacht can bring, I think they can start this competition off with a really positive result against Stade on Sunday.
You mentioned there Leicester flying in the Premiership, Alan. It's great to have them back, just in Europe in general, back hopefully fighting at the top table. But also we must touch on the current champions, Toulouse. We mentioned earlier how good they were last year. How do you fancy their chances this year, Matt?
Interesting one, Stu. They won top 14 and Europe last year. To do that back-to-back is very hard. And Hugo Monnier, their coach, came out last week. They lost on the weekend to Bordeaux. And I have to say, Toulouse didn't play well. Now, it's tough conditions, but that's beside the point. They haven't been hitting their straps like they were last year. and Hugo Monya came out and said, wow, look, this is so hard to win on both fronts, on the top 14 and it's going to be hard in Europe. So he's basically sending a message that Guy Nouves, the former coach, used to send, was that we're going to focus on one or the other. So some years he would say, we're going for the top 14. Some years he would say, we're going for the Heineken Cup. And that would depend where you end up later in the year. Now, Toulouse aren't failing. They're coming second. They've been leading all year. But they just haven't been playing the really sexy, snappy, offloading, brilliant game that they played last year, where they were just really untouchable at certain points of the year. Now, they've still got great players. As Alan came to, the pack is incredible. Best 9 in the world. Entomac, Ramos, to play fullback. Medard's still there. The old Maxime Medard in his mid-30s. Maybe his last year. He's talking about going again. Guillem at outside centre. I mean, they've still got a really good team. I think a lot's going to depend, and I suspect them to make the quarters. I think we can't say what Toulouse are going to do until the quarterfinal stage, because the way their coach is talking and the way they're playing, they're going to have to make a choice at some stage which competition they focus on. Now, we know that every other club in France except Toulouse has the top 14 above winning a World Cup. French players say that all the time. They choose between a World Cup and winning a top 14, they take the top 14, except for Toulouse. They're the club in France that values Europe higher than any other club. So I think the watching of Toulouse this season in Europe is going to be a really fascinating journey, because the other thing that's in the middle of it, the Six Nations, there is a lot of players from Toulouse going to feature in the French national team. So how they come back from that tournament and how they come out, that's the fascinating part. But don't write them off. Don't write them off at all. They're still a great team. But I do, just to finish on that, I do see a little bit of fatigue in them, even at this stage of the year. So it'll be interesting where they pan out come April, May.
Do you agree with Matt, Alan, there? Is there a bit of fatigue, or do you think they can go on with another title for the sixth time?
Well, they have a big squad, Stuart, and I think that's really important. And it's how you manoeuvre throughout the season, and it's getting a bit of luck with injuries and stuff like that, that you keep guys fit and healthy. Look, any team that can put out Dupont, Intimac, and the pack of forwards that they have. So if they're all fit and healthy and well, and I think for Hugo Mola, it's about just it's hard to keep it going on both fronts, and that's an incredible achievement. Matt has alluded to that. Really, really difficult, because it's the emotional turmoil of that week after week, trying to get that emotional pitch right. And these guys are away playing. They're off playing Six Nations, playing internationals. They have a lot of internationals as well. So they're probably the closest to Leinster, if not, they're probably, well, their budget is absolutely incredible. But we talk about Leinster's depth all the time, and their depth chart is very, very big, particularly with their forwards. Not so much in their backs, Matt, I would suggest. I think they've struggled a little bit. They've ended up playing Zach Holmes in the centre, and Guitoun and Peter Aki has been out injured. I think they had the Argentinian outside back played there last year in that final when they had injuries. And La Rochelle made him look ordinary for probably 20 minutes in that game last year. But I just think with the power and the pace they have, if they can get as close to full strength, I just look at their forward pack, Julian Marchand and Paul Mauvaka, hookers, just incredible ball players. Charlie Faumuina, the Arnold brothers. You can just roll these guys off. They're seasoned internationals and they're quality. But they have a lot of rugby to play, so that could be an issue. And Matt has said that as well. How do you go from getting your emotional pitch right with playing the All Blacks, playing for your club, playing in the league, back to Six Nations? It's a bit of a roller coaster up and down. So you need a big squad for that. But look, I think they're probably the team to beat in this competition. But who knows? Bordeaux could be a surprise packet this year. Matt will probably know more about them. They've got Leicester at home. Clermont, every year we speak about them. Racing have been very up and down. I think on their day, no one would probably fancy playing them, particularly in Paris, Exeter. So there's a number of teams who can win this. Leinster probably from an Irish perspective, but Toulouse are going to be right up there, I think, and a hard team to beat.
It's going to be fascinating. Just to finish off the pod, lads, quick predictions. Matt, the 4 provinces this weekend, who's going to win, and also your overall winner of the tournament?
Well, I think it's going to be 50-50. I think Connacht and Leinster will pick up a win. And I've got bad news for Alan. The Leinster team are going to be inspired, Quinny, because I have to remind you, mate, we got a reunion. It's 20 years since that team won the Celtic League against Munster.
I don't want to hear it, Matt. I don't want to hear it.
I try and bring it up every time I see you, but I do think Leinster will win that game, and we might be lucky to see the end of it. We've got a lunch at the game. We'll be really looking forward to catching up with all the boys. But I'd love to see Ulster win. That's a hard task, and Munster have an impossible task, which means Munster have got a good show. When you tell Munster it's impossible, then that's when they say, I'm going to prove you wrong. 2 fascinating games, and look, we could come out with more than 2. I think there's definitely 2 there, but Munster and Ulster, they've got a task on their hands away from home.
And who's going to win it, Matt?
I think Claremont will win, and you just got to say Wasps are going to win.
And sorry, the overall winner?
The overall thing? Stewie. Gee whiz, mate. Yeah, that's a tough one.
First week, you've got to put the...
Yeah, Leinster or Toulouse, I think will win it.
And Quinny, the 4 provinces results and a winner?
Leinster, Connacht, 2 wins there, and unfortunately, I think Munster and Ulster may come up short and lose those games, which is not the end of the world for them. They're both tough away games, and the circumstances are difficult for them. Overall winner, I would say, it's a tricky one. It's Leinster or Toulouse, I think, for me, and just depends what happens when you get to those knockout stages. So I think Leinster are probably the ones I'd pick.
Well, lads, it's been really, really interesting. You both can't be right, but we shall see this weekend and going forward. Thanks for joining me, and it's great to have you on the pod, and we will chat again this time next week.
Cheers. Thanks, Stuart.
Thanks, Stewie.